Good evening and welcome to Burnsville Park and National Resource Commission meeting for 7/21. First item of our agenda is approval of agenda for this evening. Commissioners, any item to add for the agenda? Hearing none. Staff, any items to add to the agenda?
Nothing from staff.
Thank you. Commissioner, I would like to have a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And motion moves. Second item on the agenda is citizens' comments. Is there anyone who would like to come in and have a comment which items which are not on the agenda today? Okay. Seeing none, move to the third item, approval of minutes from June 2nd, 2014. Commissioners, any item or any revision to the minutes of June 2nd? No? Thank you. Staff?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner would like to have a motion to approve the minutes for June 2nd.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion moves. Third, we are going to go for the fourth one is review proposal to add a garden area to Vanderbilt Field in the Alamine Park. This project does not need council's approval to the agenda. PNRC commissioners were requested to provide feedback to Burnsville Community Foundation and their staff. And presenting will be Terry Schultz, Director of Natural Resource and Commissioner of Burnsville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, good evening. I'm very pleased to be able to share with you this evening a project that is being proposed by the Burnsville Community Foundation to add a garden area next to Rich Vanderlaan Field in Alamagnet Park. Just so you have a good handle on the location, again, the project is proposed to be put into Alamagnet Park. This is the main drive coming into the park, and you can see the red circle. That's a specific area where this garden would be installed. It would connect this parking area to this walkway. This is Vanderlaan Field. It was designated as Vanderlaan Field several years ago, really in honor of all the work that Rich Vanderlaan had done to support baseball in our community. And this project this evening is to kind of expand this area in honor of Rich, who passed away last year. Again, this is the sign here, that entrance sign that says Rich Vanderlaan Field when you're coming in on the parkway. Just quickly, again, as we mentioned, the idea is to add a garden area by the entrance to Vanderlaan Field. This will be a Burnsville Community Foundation project, and it will connect the parking lot for the field to the field itself. And the foundation would provide all the supplies, installation, and then ongoing maintenance. All of those items would be donated. The value of that, if you were to add it up, is roughly $27,000. So this is a significant contribution to the community. Now, I know there are other partners involved that are working with the Burnsville Community Foundation. I'm not going to try to list them. I'm going to allow Mary Jo DeLeese to do that, who is here representing the Burnsville Community Foundation. And I'm also going to have Mary Jo share with you the specifics of the plan. This is information that was in your background packets. Mary Jo?
Thank you, Terry.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Mary Jo DeLeese, and I'm here today representing the Burnsville Community Foundation. Rich Vanderlaan was a friend of mine. He was also a community activist. He served on the Burnsville Community Foundation for many years and also founded BA 191. The Community Foundation wanted to do something special to recognize Rich for his community service work and also to honor his love of baseball. Rich always said, "No kid that wants to play ball in Burnsville but can't afford it will go without." Rich personally paid sometimes so our youth could play ball. His passion truly was helping kids. Today, we present to you our concept for an addition to Alamagnet Park. It is intended to honor Rich and his contributions. We feel it'll be a wonderful addition to your park. It is designed to attract children, but also to make a beautified area for adults to admire for many years to come. Jim Galbraith, come on, who is also the landscape architect and designed the project, is here with me to answer questions you may have related to the construction. Following any discussion, we respectfully request that you approve our design today so that we could begin the project. Thank you for your consideration, and we're open to questions now for Jim.
Commissioners? Questions or? The only question I have is, these three items that are seeing on it are, so the trees down here, are they still going to stay there? Because I'm seeing it from the top. There are 3 trees.
Yeah, this 30-foot tall spruce,
Right.
this 25-foot tall pine, 30.
So there are the 3 that will stay in.
Yeah, and there's a silver maple here, so there are no plant materials being removed from the site, turf only for this project.
Sarah, go ahead.
I have a question about the specific plants that you want to use. It says flowering ground cover. I'm wondering if you could tell us more about what species of plants you plan on using.
2 points to make on that. One is the way I think as a site designer, and then the other one is the sort of structure of the donations to this type of a project. One, as a site designer, probably one of the last things I ever do is to pick plant material species. So if there's only one in here, really there's only one ground cover, right? Well, some site plans will have 50 species of plant material. And really, truly, when we're designing, we're thinking we want something about 10 feet high with a dark green foliage that provides a screen. It would be nice if it had a flowering habit or not, or a fruiting habit or not. So frankly, the answer to your question, because these are donated materials, we're going to have to wait and see what we can get that is a 12-inch or less flowering perennial, not necessarily full season, that's drought tolerant, right, and stress tolerant, because it's going to be out here on this island in this new garden.
Can I make a recommendation?
Absolutely.
I would love to see some native Minnesota plants going in there, if it can be considered. There are a lot of very appropriate prairie plants that flower under 12 inches and are adapted to dry and stressful conditions. So,
And bless your heart, that's a very common request by commercial project patrons and by homeowners, and it's true. Most of our shade-tolerant and drought-tolerant species are found out there in Minnesota in our forests and in our prairies. So,
okay. It'd be nice to see if something that is beautiful and could be ecologically beneficial. So that would be my recommendation
That's a good idea.
to consider. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, my question is, why is silver maple of all the, trees that probably don't add too much? They tend to be really tall and just don't really add much, and they're sort of messy. I would suggest a nicer, maybe a red maple or something like that.
Well, you're very astute with regard to the silver maple. It's an existing tree, right? So it's not a tree that we're proposing to plant there. You're correct. In the maple, in the maples, there's your soft maples and your hards. Your Norway maples, your red maples, your Crimson King maples. Those are all hard maples, generally more valuable in the cultured landscape. So what you're referring to is that this is sort of a park-grade maple, like the box elder. It is the reason that there's not a concern about root damage to this particular tree. We're not that particularly close to it, but silver maples, because they're sort of pioneerish in the landscape, they'll just grow, out there from seed.
What would be the problem of removing that tree and putting in a nicer tree to match all the rest of the spruces and the
Well,
plants?
It wouldn't be a problem. There's, maybe $3,500 to $4,500 in a new, because you'd want to put in a tree that was substantial to start with. So that's a spaded tree. That would be one brought in on a truck. And then there's always some concern about, will you get the hole in the ground you want to get when you're removing a tree of that size. It's a 24-inch caliper silver maple. So when you pull that out and pop another tree in, sometimes there's air pockets, or sometimes you have trouble getting the existing
I
out.
think my only comment is, this is a long-term project that you're doing, and so maybe this might be the time to replace the silver maple and put in a nicer tree.
Well, one of the concerns about a silver maple is that they're soft and they blow down,
Yes.
aside from being dirty, right? So it would be, someday if it does blow down or break, then perhaps at that time it would need to be replaced, or perhaps there's some room to do something now.
Just to be clear, it's a 24-foot tree, not a 24-inch tree.
Yeah, now this, deciduous trees are measured,
Well, I'm just pointing out, it says on the, it's got the little inch hash marks.
yes.
But it's a 24-foot tree. It's not a 2-foot tree.
No, deciduous trees are measured by caliper.
Okay.
Yes, so they're this wide so far from their base. That's how American nurserymen measure deciduous trees. Conifers, like pines and spruces and firs and pine cone bearing species, are measured by height.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So it's a big
confusing seeing
tree.
it next to the other spruce and pine
Yes,
trees
it's
that
a
were
little
measured in
confusing.
feet, and then it changed.
It's a big tree.
Okay.
Is the point.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I can see on the drawing the canopy is large, so
Yeah.
it was like a little off.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
a
would
good
just
question.
say, having two sons that play baseball, sometimes it's nice not to just have pine trees, because on hot days like this, you look for the shade
Provide
to
shade.
stand under.
And right on the opposite side of where these trees are the picnic areas that you recently replaced that are so beautiful. I think personally the trees that are there are useful, and they're a very nice backdrop for the garden.
I have a quick question, and it's not so much related to, this development and such, but more to the city, a question to the city and JJ and Terry. This is the starting point for the cross-country ski area, right through here. Has there been an alternative or consideration given to that?
Commissioner, this would actually be the cross-country ski area starts right on that path that you see there.
Yeah.
Yep. Right
Well,
there. So it really won't impact that. That's not a great start for a cross-country ski path.
I know that,
Yeah.
but I pull right up there.
Yeah, okay.
I walk a couple steps and off I go. So I just want to make sure, I'm not, nothing to do with the project, I understand, but just so there's consideration made this winter when this is all under snow.
Yeah, appreciate your comments, Commissioner. We will need to be careful of those are paver bricks, and when we set up our plowing operations. But staff doesn't have any concerns about being able to work around that. But it's a good point, something we need to consider.
Any other questions?
Just one. How large is the sculpture?
39.5 inches tall, so it's just about the height of a fourth grader.
Okay.
So we anticipate kids coming up, putting their arm around it. It is a bronze statue. It's coming from New York. It was fabricated and designed there.
Terry?
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if I could impose on Jim just to talk a little bit about the project and what's involved in some of the key elements. The statues, one of them you mentioned, but the paver bricks and...
Sure. I appreciate your comment about your two sons who play baseball. I raised a son who played baseball, and I coached it, and we played in this park so many times, especially what I remember were the tournaments that happened at Rich Vanderlaan Field number 1, and then Bob Brunel Field number 2, and then there's so many other fields and space in there. So the project is layered because of the memorial, the memory of Rich Vanderlaan and the placement of this garden in his memory, with the fact that you'll probably know that there's a circulation, there's just kind of like the state fair, when these things are going on, and there's a circulation layer in here that solves that problem. You'll see where this parking lot space is taken here for pedestrians, and there's a new curb cut put in so that people not only, again, can access this area where this garden is and sculpture, but they can move through without having to go onto the street. And they move through to the concession area and to the field number 1. This is also part of what's proposed is that the city of Burnsville would paint this crosswalk because it does not exist now. And people who come out of field number 2 and move towards this area just sort of walk across the street. And I've always, wondered about our kids when I was coaching because there's so much traffic and so much activity. How would circulation be directed? So the second layer is that this large circle with a 13-foot radius gets put in here with a sculpture, a lit sculpture in the middle of it. And these 2 gardens, and if you look very closely, it probably has hit all of you, that those 2 lines in that circle represent the stitches of a baseball. So when we go in to place these pavers, that area will differ from the field, what we call the field of pavers that's marching like in a stack bond or in a basket weave. It'll be put together in a herringbone in a basket weave so that it looks like it goes up and under each other like the stitches of a baseball. This is a plan view drawing. I always am struck that we can talk about this here. Most people won't get that on the ground experiencing the garden. But some people will. It's just a reference to how important
Baseball.
Rich was to the start of baseball for youth in Burnsville.
Good. Terry, do you want to continue or you good? Thank you. Sarah, you have any?
Yeah, I thought about this when you pointed out that you'd be removing a parking space, and I don't know what else might be around that area, but I would love to see if there isn't already some bike racks installed to encourage both kids and adults to bike to this location. That's my recommendation.
I'm waiting for Terry to say
Yeah.
duly noted.
Off the top of my head, I can't say if there's bike racks in the area, but if there isn't, that's something the city should certainly provide, and we could certainly do that.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other? I have hopefully the last question is, here we are talking about adding a ramp. Today, do we have a ADA ramp type here, or are we? This is something new that's going to be added down where the curb cut and concrete ADA ramp. Is it something
No, that does not exist.
exists today? Okay, and then also same thing going back towards where we are going to paint the pedestrian thing. Is there a ramp there too, or is just the same color? If where it says painted pedestrian cross proposed. Next to it, is this a ramp or is this just a?
Mr. Chairman, there are ramps on both sides of the parkway where you see that proposed striping, so we'd just
Okay.
be adding the striping.
Okay,
The
striping,
ramps
so-
are in place.
Okay.
So we would just need to add that ramp at the new location to connect into the new walkway, and that would be something that the city would be providing.
Got it. Thank you. So,
I was just going to say that I think it would be helpful if you had the crosswalk there, just because a lot of balls go fall, and little brothers and sisters often will just run in the street. And that's a very busy road with a dog park right behind it sometimes that aren't always watching out for people. And I like the location of the garden because the dog people will be able to see it too, versus further in.
And I assume we've all been there. When you drive into Al Magnet Park, it's a winding drive, and it's sort of tree-lined, and it's a cultured landscape. It's taken care of. And then on the left, everybody looks, and they see this house, and they say, well, what's that doing there? And there's a sign out in front of it that says Baseball Association 191. That's what this is about. But this is really the physical and temporal threshold to the ball fields, this area right here. So this really, for the crosswalk and the parking and the concessions, the ball fields, this is a perfect place for a garden memorial.
if you're good. Again, this was all as requested by its feedback. It was not intended to get any kind of approval. Just one for the record. I just wanted to clarify that. Terry?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff would appreciate you making a motion in favor of the project if
Oh,
you're
do you
so
want to make a
inclined.
motion on this?
We would like a motion, and then, of course, if there's any recommended revisions to the plan, if you could include those in your motion.
So I was under the impression that we are just doing feedback, not, so that's why so all of those conversations that Sarah and everybody has given their recommendations, do we want to now put a recommendation, come back, or how would we address it?
If you're comfortable, we'd like to have a motion this evening. You could incorporate any changes that you felt should be considered in that motion. I have on my notes to look at the type of plants and encourage the Community Foundation to use native plants and to add a bike rack into the area.
Commissioner, are we okay with that? Okay. So that said, we would like to have a motion to approve the plan as with the addition of two things which Terry will look into, but it may or may not be. Am I clear?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I mean, the bike rack we can do. Whether or not native plant materials will be available, given the fact that they're counting on donations, I think the foundation would like to have some flexibility in that regard. I'm sure they'll make that their preference, though.
Correct.
Good. Commissioners, are we okay? Okay. We'd like to have a motion to move forward with the proposed plan.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion moves. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the review proposal renovation plan for Lac Lamont Ball Field Complex. Terry, are you planning to start? Or
I am. Thank you,
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, Commissioners. The next item before you is to consider the renovation plans that we have pulled together for Lac Lavon Park. It is something that has been in our parks capital improvements plan for a number of years, and Commissioners, you have been out to the site to look at Lac Lavon, and we've kind of been telling you for years it's coming, and it's finally here this evening. I'm going to introduce Jeff Raddick, who is our Assistant Public Works Director and is helping us out as project manager with this project. So with that, I will turn it over to Jeff to give you an overview of the project that we are proposing. Jeff?
Welcome, Jeff.
Good evening. As Terry mentioned, I'm Jeff Raddick, Assistant Public Works Director. I act as the team lead on this project. Quite often we do this in Public Works when we get a large project. Somebody else takes the team lead and can facilitate the project, and then the department head or the most senior person can actually be a part of the design and not have to worry about the administration. So I'm here this evening to give you a review of the project. Terry Schultz is here. He can answer questions about the impacts to the department, the parks, the recreation, the natural resources department. Sitting back there is Mitch Workman. Originally, Todd Hallinan from Kimley Horn and Associates, our project consultant, was going to be with us tonight, but he had family issues he had to deal with up north. So Mitch is filling in for him. He should be able to answer site questions for you that I can't, or in greater detail than I can. And sitting next to Terry is Tim McElwain, our project consultant from HCM Architects. Obviously, the building is probably about a third of the project, and an important part of the project. And architects is just some skill we don't have on staff. For our audience, Lac Lavon Ball Field Complex is located in the southeast corner of Burnsville on Lac Lavon Drive and County Road 46 or 160th Street. Lac Lavon Park and Ball Field Complex was purchased and developed from the proceeds of the 1982 Park Bond Referendum. The complex is a traditional four-field pinwheel design with two additional fields laying to the east. It's pretty unique of a complex at this age to be more than 4 fields, to envision the need for more than 4 fields. And currently, the use is way beyond the 6 fields.
And when it was opened in 1982, it was the premier complex in the South Metro for softball. It has, this fall, recognized 30 years for the complex. It currently is used Sunday through Friday evenings for league play and hosts at least 12 weekend tournaments a year. So it's well used. As Terry mentioned, the project has been coming for quite some time, but the use of the fields and trying to work it in with the project has been difficult. So it's proposed all at one time to mitigate the impacts to the rec programming at the site. From the beginning of the project, Terry, I, and the project team have been working on this project since February. And since its inception, it has basically 6 elements to the project: hardscaping, fencing, irrigation, trail lighting, scoreboards, and building, with an overarching theme of sustainability. So our project team of Kinley Horn and Associates, HCM Architects, and Mainline Consulting, which do irrigation, have been brought on as of May. And we've been working the project pretty consistently since then, and are getting close to final design and review. Last week, they had a meet and greet at the site with the Softball Council and a softball league, and reviewed the site and the project. And now we're coming to the commission for comments and questions and getting your feedback, and hopefully your approval to go to the council with it. Another more serious concern of the project is foul ball and overthrow safety. It's been our #1 complaint at the site, and it doesn't work into all the 6 elements very well like sustainability does, but it does work into fencing and building, and is addressed in those 2 elements. The hardscape is 30-year-old asphalt, evident on the top right of your screen. It is the point that it is deteriorated, that it simply is in need of replacement. We did consider pervious pavements, as I mentioned in the background, but pervious pavements aren't really great for the site because the red rock dust and runoff would plug the system before we get our useful life out of the pervious pavement. So it's basically to be replaced in kind with bituminous. On the bottom right, you will see areas that we can make up and transfer from bituminous to greenscape. It's probably not something you do with a new site, but we have a lot of experience at the site, and our traffic flows at the site. We know them pretty well, so we can tighten up the areas and get some green space and less asphalt. Fencing and backstops. Our greatest concern, I guess, with the site are foul balls hit from home plate that go up and over the current backstop and land on bleachers in the adjacent fields. Most of this is attributed to the current backstops that are there. The current backstops are in the upper right. They're 20 feet across the back, 30 feet down each wing, and approximately 20 feet high to 12 feet high. So what we are proposing to change them to 30-foot high straight backstops that are pretty common in the industry, and we have them at Al Magnet Field, and they seem to be producing at least decent safety for the spectators. So some project sites go over the 30 feet. We are kind of tight in our alleyways, and anything more than 30 feet we feel would kind of get a tunnel effect or a corridor effect. So that's kind of where we're ending up on 30 feet. And even Terry would tell you we have concerns about 30 feet, but it's for safety. So fencing and overthrows. Infield overthrows from to first and third base are a concern. The current fences in these areas are 6 feet tall. We're going to replace them with 8 feet. The problem with 6 feet is if they do go over the fence, they quickly become at head height for spectators of the site. So 8 feet will hopefully keep more balls in the play area and keep overthrows from the alleyways. The dugouts are unfortunately integral to the fencing system at the site, and they wouldn't survive the disassembly and reassembly that would be required to replace the fencing. So we are proposing new dugouts, and actually we can upgrade the size of the current dugouts to new standards pretty much for the same cost as replacing our current, because they are basically kits that come, and sustainability wise they have no waste to the kits, and they're manufactured in mass, so they do meet the price of current dugout. Outfield line fencing is currently 6 feet. The poles, rails, and maintenance strip. The maintenance strip is the concrete that lays beneath the fencing material, so we don't have to trim as much and do as much maintenance. They're all in good condition, so we're simply proposing to replace the mesh. The mesh has been warped and pulled by maintenance equipment and simply from people running into them and using them as temporary backstops for practice and things along those lines. So we're going to simply replace the mesh there. The outfield fencing is currently 6 feet. The standard is 8 feet. So we're going to actually sleeve the poles that are there to 8 feet, so we can save the maintenance strip that is underneath, and then we will put 8-foot mesh on the 8-foot poles, new rails, and new, more professional foul poles, and all new fence except for the backstop will get a more durable and long-lasting fence guard on top of it. The irrigation system, there's not a lot of sustainability-wise for irrigation system, but in the case, technology has made up for the sustainability on the irrigation side. There's things called central control systems, or a computer system that runs the irrigation system. What it does is it calculates the evapotranspiration of the turf grass from the wind, the humidity, the solar radiation, and the temperature of the turf grass, and it calculates how much water is lost and it puts that back each night with irrigation. It is pretty consistent that central control system can save 30 to 50% of your water, simply from factory settings to the custom settings every night that the computer system creates. And this might be the only correlation we have to target field, but central control is run at target field, and we are planning to use the same system. Trailway lighting. Trailway lighting currently exists. It's probably at least 5 to 10 years beyond its useful life, based on the condition at the site. We are planning to replace it with LED technology, and the head we've chosen has distribution, a linear distribution along the trail, so it cuts down on the light pollution and other parts of the park that aren't needed. It tries to illuminate in a linear line for the trail. Scoreboards are most often complaint with the scoreboard system is they simply do not work. They're constantly out there fixing them and trying to do maintenance on them. So we are proposing to change them out with LED technology. Hopefully more user-friendly and less maintenance. Currently there are 4 scoreboards for fields A through D. E and F don't have scoreboards, but it is proposed with this project to add scoreboards to E and F. Site work at the site. We aren't going to do this. This is just to represent the current drainage swales that are out there. The current drainage swales pretty much surround each field and basically make natural rainwater gardens for the fields. up in the upper right here, there's a basin. I don't think it was designed, but I had talks with the engineer, and the outlet for the basin is well over a 500-year event. So we are infiltrating almost every rainfall that happens on the site. So currently there are some minor drainage problems in the more flat areas, and 2 rainwater gardens are proposed to deal with those. The building is central to the pinwheel. Terry and I and the project team, we spent a considerable amount of time on the building, and obviously the most sustainable solution would be to find a use to remodel the current building, but that simply is not possible. Listening to Tim, our architect, and even our building official, the only reuse option for the current building incorporates knocking down most of the building and rebuilding it, to the tune of probably about $150,000 extra over what a new one-story building would cost us. It's simply the building code, the ADA, and the fire code have changed so much since the building was built. So on the left of your screen is the existing building. On the right of your screen is the proposed building. They're close to equal in square footage. Obviously, we go from a 2-story to a 1-story building because of the ADA concerns and the costs that are associated with it. But the distribution of square footage is kind of greater to the need of the site. A lot of the uses that need to be on the ground floor are simply too big for the ground floor, and a lot of the second floor is simply unused space most of the time. And the way tournaments have evolved, there's really no need for a press box anymore with all the technology, and the scorekeeping's usually taken from the dugout instead of from a second floor now. So the tournaments that needed the second floor have changed also. So the restrooms have gone basically from 290 to 500 square feet, basically to deal with the ADA and get 4 fixtures in per sex. Concession areas increased, storage areas increased, utility rooms increased. Only thing we cut down is the tournament administration room. Basically, it's the whole entire second floor, and now it becomes about a 17 by 10 room, 170 square feet. And the great addition of the proposed building is roof overhangs. About 580 square feet of roof overhangs. This goes back to the safety element, and quite often people that are engaged with the building on the site aren't watching the games. They're getting concessions or going to the bathroom or something, so they aren't watching for foul balls. So that is a concern, and here I guess the theory is to get them under a roofed structure before they start dealing with what they're doing and not looking at the games. Floor plan, concession and concession storage on the upper portion of the building, tournament and administration on the left, and field maintenance. Then women's, utilities, and men's restrooms. Something kind of unique to the site is we had to get the building within the site and still work with our traffic patterns that exist. So the building ends up pretty much being mostly square. The disadvantage of being square is the men's restroom ends up to be interior to the building and offers little daylighting. So our architect has come up with a couple of options to try to get daylighting into each of the restrooms, and he'll go through those. So I'll hand it over to Tim McElwain, our architect, and he can do a couple of SketchUps for you.
Thank you. I'll have Vaughn from our office run the SketchUp model. As Jeff has said, he did a great summary of all the site work in the building. As we looked at the building, we did go back after I think you're looking at option 5. And one of the options was to look at the building, the existing building, and frankly, to get the space needs, the toilet fixture counts, and specifically to get accessible spaces that meet current code, I think we were keeping 3 walls of the existing building. And so a very good summary that the cost was far and above a new building. So right now we're looking at that single-story building. And Vaughn, if you could click on option A and run us through the SketchUp. Okay, so this is the building. I apologize if the color always goes a little funny from our screen to this, but this would be the view as you're coming from the north and you go underneath the picnic shelter. And so you're seeing this angle, and what you're seeing on the front is, we'll just call it the front porch. It's about a 14-foot deep overhang that's the whole width of the building, and the 2 windows you can see facing you are the concession order windows. Okay, so that's where people would be queuing, would be undercover, there'd be condiments and things there. Or people just gathering. The 2 doors you see, one provides access to the concession space, the other is to the tournament admin space, and that window you see there is for tournament admin people to look out. It's a nice relationship because typically when Burnsville is renting this facility for a tournament, oftentimes they're getting the concession work as well. So there's a relationship between tournament admin and concession help. So it's a nice relationship. Once again, that is undercover. And so we're envisioning that some people can have a table set up, can be signing people up, etc. Now this model was done a little bit before. We've had a couple meetings since, but just to the right of that window will be, right between the window and the door, will be a large board panel that will be set up for tournament bracketing. So everything that a visitor needs to orient themselves to the building, concession, admin, is right when you walk in. As Jeff indicated, it's a square plan because we had some fire access, emergency access that we needed to go around the buildings, as well as service vehicles that need to go along the southwest and the southeast sides of the building. We needed good clearance. Well, anyway, so what we like to do is we always like to have natural light coming into the restrooms, and we typically like to get a little more volume in the space. So what we've done here is we have provided tall dormers that provide natural light and additional volume into the men's and women's restroom. And we did that by putting the dormers over the center parts of the building and then wrapping around it basically that shallower pitched roof. So as you can see, there's one of the dormers. If you can spin around to your right there. Okay. So if we stop here, the women's restroom right, men's restroom left, you go into those spaces, and the dormers are on both sides. Once again, they're providing natural light and higher volume into those spaces. This is a 3-season, it's a non-conditioned building, but it's mechanically ventilated. So it'll be on a time clock, so the building will always have ventilation and will pull air in low along the building base, and then the exhaust will be up high. So those are constantly being ventilated and turned over. And we do that for several reasons, just to keep the air moving. It's also, we know that how these are maintained, they're typically almost power washed out and squeegeed to a trench drain, and this is a system that allows the floors to dry very quickly. So, and we also are showing a couple windows there that'll have privacy glass right off sort of the entry vestibule to the restroom. As I've been there measuring the space, it's the classic thing that one of the doors for the one restroom is around the side, and somebody comes around saying, where's the men's, where's the women's? Well, it's on the other side of the building. These will be together. So this is on one side of the building, and the opposite side, of course, is the concessions. In terms of, and the other thing the side dormers do for us, not only provide, once again, the light, it also provides, can you just spin around on the model, Vaughn? It provides a nice sort of sense of drama. It sort of creates that, sort of nice cross gable that people sort of orient with, park situation, sort of a festive environment. And it helps compete with sort of the height of the 30-foot masts. So, and it's all done basically wood framed. What we're going to do is we're going to come out of the ground with a concrete base, back up. We're going to have a brick facing on that. Above that will be stick framed with cementitious siding. Very, very durable materials. And then above that, of course, it'll be wood trusses and/or hand framing, and then laminated asphalt roofing. And the reason we always recommend laminated asphalt roofing is because you can get a 30-year roof at a third of the cost of a metal roof, and we're in a situation here where you're going to get a lot of balls coming over, and it's going to look like you had hail damage after a couple of years on a metal roof, no matter how thick of a roof you put on. Laminated in this situation is probably the best application. I love metal roofs, but I think I would be remiss in recommending that because I think you'd be unhappy with how it looks after a few years. It would be dimpled. We're highly recommending, real durable materials, and I do like cementitious siding. I don't like to put all masonry on this because I think it can look like a bunker. We like it to have a sense of scale, and I always say, to Terry and his staff, I say, you probably have people that can paint. You probably don't have a mason on site that can replace brick. So we try to keep the brick nice and low for durability, and then above that, if there is a problem with vandalism or tagging, that can easily be painted out. It's just like the same kind of product you would put on a home, and it's really tough. So a nice, clean, simple building, simple floor plan, simple construction. We've done many buildings like this, not looking just like this, but of this type. We just bid 3 buildings for West St. Paul, and the bids came in reasonable. It's a challenging bid market right now. Everybody's very, very busy. But the reason we really pushed this project now to get it started this fall is because we think we can capture people that have an opening towards the fall that can then work through the winter and then wrap it up in the spring. You don't lose any league time. You sort of take advantage of that opportunity where people are looking for that winter project versus waiting entirely in the spring and sort of dealing with inflation and unknown. And actually that project I mentioned at West St. Paul, we actually bid that in April, and we had one bidder. So the bid was rejected because it wasn't a competitive bid. So that was just a very strong indication that the market was very, very busy, and we bid it 2.5 months later, and we had 5 bids on the building. So we're thinking this is a good time. It's still a bit of a volatile market, but we think we've got a pretty good handle on the pricing. Are there any questions on the building?
I have sort of a big question. We've heard a lot about the building and the fields and the other stuff, but one of the issues that was raised is that this is going to be over budget, and the impact of the over budget is to impact on future funds in the CIP. And I'm really concerned that there's no numbers in here saying what the impact is going to be and what potentially the impact on future budgets for this program are. I'd like to hear some information.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Nachman, we have looked at the implications. What we are looking to do is to take some of the 2015 projects and move those back, but it doesn't require us to move all of those back. So the absolute top priority projects that we had in the 2015 budget would remain there, and then the other projects would have to be slid back 1 year. We think we can make that work without being much of a detriment to the rest of the park system.
Well, I appreciate what you said, but being a part of the commission here, I feel like more information on the impact of that should be shared with us before, we go ahead. And, no problem with, getting this done as soon as possible, and that does make sense. But my concern is, the impact in a little more detail, Terry, about, what the projects are, because, we're part of that, the planning. I guess that's why we're here. So I'd like to know more about that in some detail. At least I'd feel that way before I'm prepared to say, let's just, put the budget someplace else and put things off for a year.
Well, I can share some details with you. Currently in the CIP, it is estimated at $1.4 million. Total project costs for what is proposed is around $2.2 million. That's significantly amount over $800,000. What you're dealing with tonight is you're dealing with to bid the project. We quite often don't want to say what the actual bid price will be, simply because it's a volatile market right now. And from when the project was first conceptualized and put on the CIP till now, we've had drastic increases for material costs and basically contractor markup. They're making up for the downturn that they've had. So what you're dealing with tonight is to go forward to bid the project. Once we bid the project, we'll know the actual costs and what the shifting around of the CIP numbers have to do. And Terry brings those back to you in September usually, I believe.
Normally, Commissioners, we'd bring those back to you after Council had reviewed it for the following year. Now, just to add, we have shared that information with you in a 5-year plan. And I would just say to you, Commissioners, so we have decided that this was a priority project for the park system. And so we could debate, what the implications are to moving everything back. But the reality is we made this a priority over all those other projects. And I would just say to you, we are down to really bare bones on doing this project right. And so really in terms of priorities, I think this is the priority that we've had in our plan going back 3 or 4 years. And so for me, it just says we need to find a way to make this happen and then turn and look at what's left to do on our plate and set priorities for the money we have left available. And I think we could certainly do that, but I would hate to see us slow down this project, kind of waiting for that process to happen.
And unfortunately, this project is very detrimental to the site. So we do need to kind of do it all as one piece, simply for the rec programming end of things. They're concerned about losing users at the site. And that was conveyed to me from the beginning, and it's carried on through this.
So if we approve this, will we have opportunity to look at the other impacted projects?
We could certainly do that. We're not, we don't have all that information here this evening. So if you're not comfortable making a motion this evening, we'd need to gather that and have separate discussion on that. Typically, the way the capital improvement process works is staff pulls together a recommendation, and that is reviewed by City Council as part of their process and then shared with the Commission on an annual basis. And we have a 5-year lookout at the projects. And so you would kind of set your priorities then as you look out for, in the future years and make changes or recommendations to staff at that time. That normally happens in March after the budget's been completed. And that's just how we've done it, years going back. And again, it's a 5-year capital plan. So each year we're looking out 5 years and setting priorities. We also try to go to the facilities on our parks tour and show you the projects that are coming up and talk about those. Again, certainly if you're uncomfortable proceeding, I would just suggest that this is something we have shared with the Commission over a number of years. This project has been a priority in relation to the other projects that are budgeted beyond it. Now, you can certainly change those priorities. That's part of what you do as your purview as a Commission. But we feel like in order to do this project right, this is, that's the amount of money that's required, and we really need to address this and then turn to the other things that are on the list and set priorities moving forward.
Mr. Chair, part of my concern, Terry, I don't question anything that you've said. I'm just uncomfortable that we have all this detail, and we've heard details about holes being 2 feet higher and things that, I'm not sure I really care about. But there's nothing, one little sentence in here that says it's going to be over budget. And at least we could have been told somewhat what the extent of the budget would be and what the impact is, just in dollars and cents for what the fiscal impact is for the 2015. So I guess, I'm just uncomfortable because we have lots of information, but we're sort of missing, I think, some very important information.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Nachman, I understand your comments. Yeah, what Jeff has shared is it's roughly a $2.2 million project. We had a little over $1.4 million budgeted. So we will have to find, in every year roughly, we allocate $1.2 million to maintain the park system. And so we will have $400,000 left in the 2015 budget if we use $800,000 for this project to allocate towards our top priorities for 2015 other than this project. And so we would work together to come up with those priorities.
I guess what I'm saying is, instead of one sentence like that, I feel the commission should have been told what those numbers are. Rather, I'm not doubting you at all.
I think what the sentiment is, can we come back with the numbers and then have a discussion and then get for a motion, or that will hinder your work for bidding? Or can we do the bidding but do not approve it because we still like to see? I will personally also like to see that.
We would like to move forward with bidding it again so we have real numbers for you to react to. I think we could do that. Ultimately, we could come back in the interim. Just trying to think of when your next meeting, I believe, you don't meet on your normal meeting in August. And so if you wanted to have more information, that we should try to schedule another meeting earlier on. Perhaps it could be a work session. If you'd be willing to meet with us, that we could go over those things so we're not waiting until August 18th. August, is that the date, Mr. Ryan? August 18th would really put us behind on the project schedule.
I personally would like to have that information, and I am personally, I don't know, I would like to have your opinion, commissioners, to have a working session and like to talk about it. Other commissioners, please, I would like to hear your...
I've had some... I like the plan and I like the idea of if you want nice things in life, it's going to cost money, and sometimes it runs over budget, and you kind of have to deal with it and just move right along and correct course as you continue on with the plan. I had some recommendations before we started talking about changing the consideration of this plan, but I like it, and I love the sustainability theme that is seen here throughout the grounds and in the building, and I'd just like to see more. I like what you guys are doing, and I'd like to see even more done with it to make it even more successful with that sustainability idea and the rain gardens that you guys have planned here. I'd like to see another planting on there's a rain garden kind of coming in from, looks like a parking lot on the north side. And I'd like to see something like that on the south side too, where that parking lot is coming in. Something also visible. If there's not a need for a rain garden, then any kind of planting, demonstration prairie with native Minnesota plants. And then at any of those rain garden or planting stations, interpretive signs describing what their benefit is. And I like the plan.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
I would like it to see that the bathroom's not in the middle of the location. So I know of issues that occur when you do that, especially I think of insects and rodents and rats getting in. It'd be nice if they were on the outside with not access or wall access to the concessions. It'd be great if they were a separate building, but I don't think we have the funding or the space in this park to have the restrooms be a separate building.
Well, I've never.
I'm like sitting here looking, going, how could I rotate this? And I understand why you guys have it laid out the way you do.
That's an interesting point. I've never had a concern of restrooms being sort of, a rodent.
Doors are just always open and
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I mean, I think the issue is that it's always it needs to be maintained and properly ventilated, properly lit. A good segue, actually, you're asking some great questions about cost and pricing, and we have gone through. I think the last meeting we had, we really looked at what's in the project and what can be either pulled out of the project or reduced in scope. It was done through all the site work, and in the building, we actually brought some of the interior masonry down, adjusted some of the materials. But the plan, as you see it, is really based upon sort of the needs as the tournament and staff saw it.
Yep.
But we did. There's one option. Can you go to? Let's go to B. Okay. As you remember from the previous scheme, we had the dormers provide the light, and they provide sort of an architectural flair and things. Is it essential? No, it's not essential. This scheme, and we're planning on, when this does go out for bid, that we would have an alternate, and it would be a deduct alternate, to omit the dormers and simplify the roof structure by not having the cross framing, and still keeping the same main cable and all the overhangs and everything, but reducing that, and then in lieu of the dormer, we would go back with, we're showing 4 skylights, it may be 2, maybe 3. So we still get some natural light up high, but it would be something that we could put in there quite easily as a deduct alternate without having to do a lot of additional design work, that the city commissioner group as a whole and city council can say, yes, that's something we may want to take as an alternate.
And this second plan would be a reduced cost because you're not building that second dormer, right?
Correct. Yep. I don't. It's hard for me. I've given some range of numbers what that could potentially be, but that is something.
Construction is easier.
Quite simply to do that. You're still getting the same spaces. You're still getting the same functional use. It's just a reduction in sort of structure and
complexity.
Can I ask one more question? Please. And it has to do with the accessibility. I'm assuming that it meets all the ADA, but is there, on the outside door, is there there be an electric opener that someone in a wheelchair could have that door open?
We can plan for that. We can put it in. It isn't required by code. If you're able to open the door with a 15-pound pull or push, it's not a requirement.
Well, it may not be a requirement, but I don't really care about requirements. I'm concerned about people who can't open doors and might be in a wheelchair or maybe whatever. And so I would just like to recommend that we have that kind of accessibility for folks with some handicap.
That's a good point, and we certainly can look at doing that. I also want to caution you that those kinds of operators in a location where people have bats can become targets and can become a real maintenance issue. So we've had that happen where
Well, anything could happen anytime, any place, anywhere. And I'd like to take the positive approach. We can help some folks that have accessibility issues, and I think I would like to see this, if at all possible, as part of it. Thank you.
Greg? I just, one question and then maybe a comment. And so talking about the parking lot, I assume you're mill and overlay. Is that material, you're framing this whole project up as sustainability. And when I look at sustainability, it's looked at as 2 ways. There's the environmental piece, and then there's a longevity operation. And I think you're covering it both. But if we're going to remove that pavement, making sure that it goes to a recycle yard versus a landfill is one of the things. And I don't think that would add cost.
Typically, that's all part of, most of that asphalt is recycled, yes, and ground up and reused. This project is for the trails and the inner quad of the quad complex. I think it's a next year project for the parking lots. So that's a second phase of this. The parking lots aren't included as part of this base project.
And I just also like the rain gardens. I noticed that, and the stormwater's managed very well. One of the things I was curious, and I think you answered the question, but the irrigation system, I've seen, and I'm sure you have seen in so many instances where it's pouring rain and the sprinklers are on. And I always scratch my head, and I'm assuming that system, the way, when you're talking about evapotranspiration and such, would take care of that.
Yes, it would. It's a state-of-the-art control system.
Yeah, there is this system will have a rain bucket on site. So when the rain bucket is triggered, the irrigation system will start recalculating the rainfall that has fallen and how much extra it needs to add the next day.
And then the second drawing, or one of the, I think, really good things you were talking about, the undercover room, the overhangs, and, that provides a place for people to go during rain. I know a lot of you have been out at these fields when it starts pouring and there's nowhere to go. I hope, it looks like the second drawing, you may lose some of that.
No, I think it might have just been the angle you were looking at.
Okay.
The roof overhangs are the same on both.
Okay. And then the last thing, I just wanted to make sure, and I'm sure this is the case, but you'd never mentioned the glass and the dormers, and I'm assuming that those can take the punch of a ball.
Yeah, they can be, laminated tempered glazing units so that they're as strong as you can get. Or we can even go to a high impact resin, which is more of a translucent material versus a clear glass. So we're going to talk to some glazing people about that. But I would recommend a laminated tempered glass. The nice thing about those at night as well, because we will have security lights around the building, at the doors, and in the alcoves under the porch. But the interior lights, we can have a light on in the back wall so that we get sort of those triangles glowing at night, sort of become a nice anchor for the park. So that's why I'm liking those to be more clear than like impact plastic. So
I guess, just one more thing, and I apologize. I think we need to get bid numbers, right? It's one thing to talk budget, but without the actual bid in hand, we don't truly know what we're faced with. So I wanted to kind of go on record and mention that. And if we need to do a work session at a later date, I'm willing.
Yeah. I agree.
I have a question about wanting to get the bid numbers. What's going to happen when we get those numbers? Are we going to not recommend the project if it's too high? I'm just kind of thinking out loud, because I think no matter what numbers we get back, I think we're going to approve it. That's my honest opinion. And so, okay, beyond that, I had some other things I wanted to ask. Are the trees all in the picture all existing, or are we putting in any trees? They're all just existing? Okay. I would like plenty of bike racks if there's not bike racks already available, and all those trails coming in.
When you mentioned on the last one, I tried to think, and I can't imagine
have
if they're
bike
there or
racks
not.
there, I know that.
Yeah, there's one right up.
There's just all these lovely trails coming in here, and I want there to be lots of places to park for all the kids and adults that I think will bike to this very nice site. And I 100% prefer the dormer windows. That's it.
Go ahead, sir.
Is there any plans to put any buildings out for E&F? Restrooms, concession stands in the future? I'm just curious, because it's quite the walk.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Johnson, there is an idea that we have an advisory softball council that we work with, and they have raised money to put up picnic shelters and do improvements at the site, and they are working towards adding a picnic shelter on fields E and F. So that's something they hope to be able to provide for us. Again, we're kind of over budget as it is, so we were at the drawing board looking to make cuts, not add other items. So that was something that we felt we could leave for later on, and the softball council would work towards that end.
Good, I would like to see something out there sometime.
Terry, you wanted to make a comment?
Commissioner Kiefer, I think you asked about budget stuff and when we get it back. We will likely put the dormers, or eliminating the dormers, I should say, as an alternate to see what the actual savings are on that. And so then once we have bids, we can say, yes, we want to take that option, or no, we don't. You don't want to list everything as an alternate. It'll scare away the bidders because they don't want to go through all that work. So that was one item where we would have some budget flexibility. You can always, council can always turn down all of the bids. That's always written into specifications. But I think you don't want to go down the road of bidding out a project that you don't, think you're going to proceed with. That's just not good use of anybody's time. So we want to be fairly confident that we have a project that you can support.
You have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had a
Thank
few. You mentioned there were concerns with the 30-foot backstops. What were those?
Commissioner Tulgren, there's always, to me, a balance between functionality and aesthetics. And I think Mr. Raddick was, I tend to lean more towards aesthetics sometimes. And so you need to make sure those fences are high enough that they're protecting the people that are in the alleyways next to the concession building. And you could make them 50 feet high and still not protect everybody. And so it's just a balancing. We feel like 30 feet is a reasonable height, given the width of the alleys that we have, given the building and the overhangs that we're providing to provide a safe environment for our youth and for the spectators. Now, would it be more safe to have 40-foot high or 50-foot high fences? Yes, but there's a point of diminishing returns there after 30 feet, in my opinion, and so you start to have trade-offs there.
Is there some sort of best practice that we could refer to for that height?
A best practice.
From the Baseball Association or something?
30 feet is sort of the industry standard.
Okay.
For these kinds of fields.
Another question I had was about lighting, and maybe this is the next phase of the project you were mentioning. I didn't see a whole lot by the parking lots. Is that for the next phase, or is that just not in the diagrams?
Commissioner Tulgren, there is parking lot lighting and replacement of the pavement in the parking lots, as well as the lighting is in the next phase. Okay. Originally 2015, now that will be moved back to 2016. It's one example of an item that would be moved back. That was done intentionally. We want to get the construction done on the interior of the complex. That will be hard on the parking lots, and then come in the next year and redo the parking lots themselves. So the parking lot lights and the bituminous in the parking lots would be done the year after this project is implemented.
Is there more than one light in the back lots, E and F?
The south lots have 2 lights.
Okay.
I'm not sure the north lots in there. I believe 2 lights are down by the beach that are all connected to the same system. So when we go out further for the next phase, we'll look at those lights as well.
I just had a question about the impervious surface with the lake right next door. Is it the same with this design, less or more?
We have added green space, so we've reduced the amount of impervious.
I did notice, though, like the dugouts became concrete when they weren't before. And I don't know if that area where the house is, are you adding more concrete there?
Where it is proposed to have concrete is replacing bituminous. So you're trading off one impervious surface for another, so there's no net gain by expanding those dugouts.
Okay. And I just wanted to put a concern with I love the dormers and how they look, but I just feel like it's a matter of time before that glass gets broken, having been around a lot of baseball fields for the last 20 years.
Do you have one question?
Just an observation. Instead of making the fences 40 and 50 feet high, could you put a cage top across all of them?
That's actually I was trying to go to.
I could take a shot at that. I mean, you do gain by having the backstops have a now I can't bring the word to mind, but an overhang to them. That's what we currently have. What they're finding is the percentage of balls that you actually capture in that overhang, it just isn't worth the cost. You're better off going straight up higher and putting your money into that versus the overhang.
No, but like it's like an overhang that went across the house, across the building. You know,
Oh, a
just
net.
like a
net type
ceiling.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, you'd never get the ball down again, but it wouldn't be coming down on anybody who's waiting outside the building.
Well,
That was just I don't know if that's ever.
I think
it's
early
probably
on,
not really done.
the nets become a real annual maintenance cost because they really don't hold up to our weather, severe weather. So over the years, they've been put in, and they typically get taken out because they, after a while, they fall apart, and then they're not doing their job.
Oh, my question was related to what she was asking, and that also, from what you talked about the roofing part of it, will that also help the roof? The second question I had, so you can bundle up, is we normally have not used any kind of solar paneling, anything else related to because of the same concerns. Is this because I have not seen anything with solar panel, because we are talking about sustainability and everything else, but we have not. I have not seen anything in this design. Design is great, but is there a reason for it?
I'll tackle the solar panels. We have put them on park buildings, and they really only have a reasonable payback when they heat hot water. And typically you would put them on a shower building, where this has such low use for hot water that the payback would be well beyond 50 years.
Okay.
Electric panels, once again, the payback we're seeing, this is such an intermittent use, you'd be in the 30, 40, 50-year range for payback. What we have done for sustainable features on this building, all the materials used to build it are going to be manufactured locally, almost every one. We've got low-flow fixtures. They're all on sensors. We've got motion sensors on the lights. We're all LED fixtures. And frankly, I think we've talked about it earlier, the most sustainable thing we can do is build a building that's going to last 50 years. The building you have there is 30 years old, and it's really not much left. So that's the techniques that we're starting with. The other thing we can do, and we haven't broached this since early on, but we did a project of about this scale, and this was back in '09, and we had it as another alternate. And we said, as an alternate, all lumber used in the project has to be certified sustainably grown, just to test the waters. And it was a very simple line item. And we found in a project that was run, once again, about this size, it was only at that point about a $5,000 or $6,000 increase to the project. That was for the city of Medina, and the council there said, yes, we think it's worth the extra $5,000 to make that statement. That is something we can look at here, and certainly it's the largest component of the building palette that we have to work with. So I look at this project and I say it's got a lot of great sustainable features all the way from the site, stormwater management, which is actually about 95% in place. It's doing a very good job currently. So what we're doing there is enhancing it. The building, I think all the features there, we're doing as many sustainable things as we can. Yes, we can look at solar, but we're looking at a project that is already significantly over budget. And just to add that, we didn't think that the story and the payback and the options, I guess, were worthwhile. So.
Thank you. That's what I thought too, but I just want to confirm that. I think we are going around for that. So what I would like to do for now is just to have an opinion or consent about, do we want to make a motion, because we can talk and talk for a while. And this is very interesting, by the way, guys. Thank you very much for doing a great job. The design is great, but I think what I will side with Commissioner Nachman is and I want to know a little bit more is, if we get this numbers, what will change? But if we get the information for that, versus, so if we get that, and we'll still go, we know for sure we need to do something with the building. So that's all enormously we all agree upon. The question is, if we get the information, what things will change for us? Is the question, guys, that I would like to propose. And then again, for all of those, for 2015 and everything else, we still need to change the course. But going forward, please, guys, I will request that these kind of information, especially for budgeting, I look at it. It's very important for me. I'm just talking for myself. So going forward, please put that information. That will be helpful for us to make that decision or recommendation. That said, what would the commission like to do?
I'd like to suggest we schedule a special meeting sometime in the next 10 days at the convenience of everybody and you know, get it done because everybody wants to move forward. So if we could do it with that time, I'd like to see if that's agreeable.
Do you want to talk estimated numbers or do you want to talk bid numbers? We won't have bid numbers for you in 10 days. Typically bids run 2-3 weeks.
Oh, I'm just interested in, you know, architects and engineers do bid numbers. I don't think we know bid numbers, but we're, you know, I think we just want to see the impact and some of the costs that we're looking at. That's all.
So maybe that's as simple as looking at 2015, using this, what is it, $2.2 million, and then what falls off, and having that list.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we've already done that work, so I wouldn't bring a project to you not knowing that I felt like we had the projects to move back, and so we could certainly share that detail with you.
I feel like we're gathered, and I'm prepared to make a motion to recommend this project to move forward tonight. I think we should do that right now.
We've done a separate session to discuss the impact of the project.
But if we move it, we don't need that. So if for us, in order for us to make that, then we will not make a motion. Am I correct?
I would suggest you make a motion to take some sort of action tonight. Be that bring it forward to a work session to talk about the impacts on the capital plan, or to move forward with the project with any changes you would have. So,
Are you comfortable? Or other?
I'm comfortable if we set up, as I suggested, a special meeting in the next 10 days that we can look at some of these numbers. I thought that's why we were here, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I hope
Other
not.
guys? Go ahead, please.
Well, it just sounds like we have several of the commissioners that are ready to move on the motion of this project here.
With the recommendations that we've talked about.
I believe my suggestion was before that, so with the whatever semi-motion I made would be to set up a special meeting. So you want to vote on that, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Commissioner Nachman is making a motion to table the item until a
That's what I hear.
work session can be held. You would need a second for that
Right.
motion and then a vote.
That is, I'm sorry. Thank you. Do we have a second for it? And I don't mostly say anything, right? From my perspective.
You are a voting member. You have, you are able to second the motion.
So my second depends on how much time we have and can we do that, because I'm more leaning towards looking at it and then making a decision. Even though I'm not questioning the design, that you guys have done a great work. I'm not questioning the project. I'm not questioning you guys not have looked at it. What I'm looking at is proposal A, proposal B, proposal C, what things will change, and then how things will look different, which you already have done the work. So that will be my proposal. I'm not questioning any of those things, but the job, as Commissioner Nachman has said, for us is to make the recommendation as best as we can, and that's why we are sitting here.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we would, if we had a motion this evening, we would proceed and take this to council at their August 4th meeting to get authorization to go out to bid.
Okay.
If we don't get that this evening, I believe we will have to push that back until the second meeting in August, because those agendas and backgrounds are set, remember, 2 weeks in advance of their meeting.
Right.
So, and I'm going to look to Mr. Raddick to answer what the implications are of having to move that back to the second meeting to get authorization to go out to bid.
The implication is totally timeline, and
Commissioner Ahmed. Sorry, go ahead. Can we do this, Commissioner Ahmed? Is good. That we find a motion for our next meeting on the 18th or early, depending on how we want to do. That's only a bidding thing. So even though we have raised our concern that next time we want to see that, and we know that, Terry, you're doing a great job. We know that you have done ABC going forward. Please, that's a very important thing for us, just for the record, because that's what we are here for. So we have raised our point of view. We'll move forward. That's what my recommendation would be. And we will look at the plan. And then if in case we need to, can we give our opinion or recommendation on our next meeting? Not to change it, but if we want to alter some parts of it or do a recommendation to alter it.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, absolutely. We could take a look at the projects. You know, if we move forward with this and we really believe we need to spend this money to do this project right, and that's where staff is. We really feel like we're at bare bones. This was a priority. We need to get this off our list before we start looking at projects down the road. But the money that's left and how we spend that money that's left in 2015, absolutely you can have input on what those priorities should be.
Commissioner Ahmed?
Commissioners, if you weren't comfortable with that, you would have to make a decision. We're not going to do the fencing, or we're not going to, you know, renovate the building. You'd have to cut a kind of a major base level element of the project, I think. Is that true to say, gentlemen, that there's not a lot of room to cut back anything else? We're putting up fences, replacing irrigation systems, replacing a building. So we're putting things back in place that already existed. So certainly, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to, you would absolutely have input on how we spend the money that's left over. We could involve you in, we will bid as an alternate, the dormers versus no dormers. Is that a good idea in relation to another project that we could have funded once we had that number? Absolutely, you could be involved in that discussion.
Go ahead, please.
I guess my position is, as a member of this board, I feel that the presentation that we have received, the information that we received, was not done in a complete enough fashion for us to really do anything. Asking questions about, you know, the design, I think those are very fair questions. If the commission goes back to when we looked at the Lions Park, and the commission really did not accept the presentation and put it off, but that's what the commission is here to do. And I'm not, as far as the building goes, you know, it looks fine, and well, the need is there. And I guess I'm just saying that this is, if we want to go ahead, let's go ahead, because, you know, it's a silly, if we're just going to waste our time and having one more meeting, you know, that's one thing. But if this council doesn't feel that way, I'm only one member. But I think in the future, I would just suggest to when we get something to be discussed that has fiscal implications, that's an important part of what we should know about. And I'll just leave it at that.
So we have already, I think, made the recommendation to Terry. So what I would like to do is to have a motion to approve this plan for a bidding. And after the bidding, will it come back? Because we have two plans, right? Will it come back to this, or it will go to just council and then they will make a decision going forward?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we could certainly bring it back to you at another meeting to talk about share the implications, and then you could give us a recommendation in terms of if you could say we'd rather have the dormers or not have them and do this project, because we're not talking about a lot of money here. a relatively small amount of money, but it could be, you could say, we'd rather not have the dormers and do project X. And we can certainly get your
that's a
input on
better
that in terms
approach.
of priorities.
Because the reason I'm trying to, and Commissioner Ackerman, thank you very much for giving your option. It's great to hear that. From my perspective, because it's a bidding, we don't know how things are. This is basically a projected number that we'll get. Once we'll have the bidding number, I think we can make better decisions on it. Then we can give and say, yes, this is possible or not, and the recommendation will be a little bit better, in a better place.
Just one more point. In the future, when we come to a decision like this, where there's a building and money, could we have a work session so we don't have to have double time, so that when we speak with the architect who spent a lot of time doing this, just to summon and throw something at him, when he's done all this work, that's after the fact, that's not fair. So I'm saying that in the future, if we have meetings that we are going to review something like we did with the Lions program, I suggest before this is brought to this commission to do that we have a work session on that.
Agree? So it'll be recommended that going forward we can come up with, depending on what kind of project and money and you're talking about, we can talk about in advance and do a work session, and then we can haul these things out. That's good. So that said, are we ready to do a motion to approve this plan to go for bidding? Am I saying it right, Terry?
Correct. You'd make a recommendation to proceed with the project, and then you would want to note in your motion any proposed changes. I wrote down, add electric push buttons to the restroom doors.
Right.
If that's something that there's agreement on the commission about. And not sure what to do with the rain garden on this.
Use of native plants, bike racks, and addition of rain gardens or native planting zones at each one of those paths leading into that wheel.
Okay. We ready to make a motion, commissioners?
I'll motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Motion moves. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time. Okay. And the next session. Next, we're going to move for item 5, miscellaneous items. Commissioners, anything you guys like to add in the staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to note first that our August 4th meeting has been changed to August 18th. That is in order to accommodate city council meeting rather than having our council meet on the 5th, which is night to unite. So we get bumped back to the 18th of August. And then the second thing I'd like to point out, in your packets, commissioners, you received some information on cell tower RF emissions. And in recent months, we've had a lot of discussions about cell towers, and there were some concerns that were brought to this commission at the last meeting. Hopefully this packet helps you in your efforts moving forward, as I'm sure more cell tower issues will come before us. But the information in there is yours. It's educational only. There's no need to take any action on that. It's just there for you and your educational purposes only. So.
It reminded me, a question is, when the gentleman came in one of a few meetings and then asked for the information, what is our mechanism to give that gentleman the information that we have received? Or he's going to contact us, or how are we going to contact him, or just put it on the website? What are we proposing to do?
Chairman Roof, following the last meeting with that gentleman, I did have follow-up with him per his request. I also put him in touch with our consultant from, I believe, American Tower, who had that information. We presented him that information along with the findings you have in front of you from our city attorney, and so we explained to him this is the information we have, and this is how we are basing our decision based on this information. and
Thank-
our role in the process.
Thank you, JJ. Appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to the end of our formal meeting agenda. Commissioner would like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Or second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And motion moves. Thank you very much for watching the Burnsville and Natural Resource Commission meeting. Have a good evening.